Hi everyone, welcome to Kinorama, my name's George. In today's episode of Criterion Review, I'm going to be looking at what I believe to be Wes Anderson's most overlooked film. In fact, it's my favourite as well. The film is Rushmore, and this is the Criterion version of it. But does this release do the film justice, or should you buy a more affordable version? Let's find out.
What's the secret, Max?
I think you just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life. For me, it's going to Rushmore.
Wes Anderson. He's likely a director you're familiar with. His films offer one of the most unique voices in Hollywood at the moment, from his stylistic point of view, and his films are madly popular. He's got a dedicated following and also attracts stellar casts. He's also really popular with Criterion, who've released all of his films but one, being Isle of Dogs, his most recent film, but if I was a betting man, I'd say that's coming in the next 2 years. Whenever there's a Criterion sale on, be it a 2 for 25 or 20% off, I almost always see people getting at least one Wes Anderson film. I think having the majority of his films available on Criterion sort of leads people to want to collect them all, as if they were Pokemon. I just got the idea of Criterion releasing Detective Pikachu. Yes, please. Anyway, based on what I've seen, I get the impression there's not much immediacy when it comes to buying Rushmore on Criterion. I think a lot of people would much prefer, or do tend to get, his other films first. And when I say overlooked, I don't mean people think it's bad or anything like that. I mean, it's always rated pretty highly, and I doubt many people think it's his worst film. But I feel like when Anderson has heavy hitters like Moonrise Kingdom, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and Fantastic Mr. Fox, Rushmore could get lost in the shuffle. So, if you haven't seen the film yet, then let me give you a brief synopsis. Rushmore is a coming-of-age film, and follows high schooler Max Fisher. Max isn't really like the other kids. He's eccentric and speaks like an adult all the time. He involves himself in basically every extracurricular activity ever, which you can see in the opening montage of the film. There's fencing, there's kung fu, you name it, he's done it. Rushmore, which is the name of the school, is everything to Max. His life is defined by it. Max then strikes an unlikely friendship with rich businessman Herman Bloom, played by Bill Murray. However, their relationship is tested when they both fall in love with the same woman, the first grade teacher, Rosemary Cross. The film is soundtracked by a myriad of British invasion bands from the Kinks to the Who. The music gives the film a relentless energy and captures the excitement and anxieties of youth. Where the director places the music throughout the film is perfect, and the film has what I think is the best needle drop in any film ever, which is Ooh La La by the Faces at the end of the film. Also, yes, I'll address the elephant in the room, child-teacher relationship. It's a little bit weird, it's very weird. But I think it's tastefully handled here, and never predatory or anything like that. The romance is one-sided, and Rosemary never encourages Max either. Basically, Rushmore is funny and touching in a way that the best coming-of-age films are, with that endearing Wes Anderson touch too. Being the director's second film, it's quite far from the Wes Anderson we know today. Now that for some people might be a positive thing. If you're not a fan of his style and find it too much or overbearing, then I would still recommend this to you. It's not full-on Wes, and could act as a great entry point too if you do want to get into his stuff. For me though, I think it's great to be able to see how his style has progressed over the years by looking at his earlier work. And I don't think this film lacks anything his more recent films have at all. I think it works perfectly fine as it is. So as you can tell, I think the film's great. It's my favourite Wes Anderson film. But how does Criterion present it, and what supplements are provided? Well, first up we have a commentary from Anderson, Owen Wilson, who wrote the film, and Jason Schwartzman, who plays Max. Commentaries are often included on Criterion releases, and for good reason. They're brilliant. They show you insight into the production of the film, funny little stories, tidbits, stuff like that. And this is no exception. The chemistry between the three different speakers is really welcoming, and you can tell each of them is excited to talk about the film. I think if you love this film, then this is an absolute treat. I mean, like I said, you hear brilliant stories and little tidbits throughout, and find out loads of interesting stuff. If you're not the biggest fan of the film, then I would say maybe don't watch the commentary. It's quite long compared to the other special features, and why would you care for it if you didn't like the film already? Up next is a roughly 16-minute documentary of the behind the scenes of the film titled The Making of Rushmore. This is just brilliant stuff, as it was filmed during the production of the film. It was made by Eric Chase Anderson, who is Wes Anderson's brother, so the doc feels welcomed and unintrusive. It opens up with Bill Murray shaving, and despite his usual deadpan wit, he's really talkative here and seems to be really enjoying himself. The rest of the documentary is filled with interviews with the main players of the film, so it's great to hear what they're thinking at the time, which is especially interesting when you compare it to the commentary, which is much more of a retrospective thing. I love especially Jason Schwartzman talking about the character of Max. He sounds almost in disbelief of how strange he is and his nature. He talks amusingly about his gusto as well. It's also really cool to see specific scenes being shot as well as the outtakes that weren't used in the film. I found it really interesting to see that the pool scene with Bill Murray was actually shot at night, even though the scene itself takes place during the day. It's these sort of filmmaking techniques that make any behind the scenes doc worthwhile. It's especially great to see an accomplished director like Wes Anderson at work, and I was surprised how involved he is in a social sense. You get the impression that Wes Anderson is a perfectionist, and from that you can assume he's a bit snobbish, but that doesn't really seem to be the case when you see him on set. He seems really collaborative and just really like he's enjoying himself. Bottom line, the set of this film just looked like it was a whole lot of fun, and I think Eric captured that really, really well. So next up is a collection of plays performed by Max and his acting group in the film. They parody the films Armageddon, Out of Sight and The Truman Show. There's not too much to say about these. They're cute and they're fun, and that's about it. They're short and they don't really add anything new to the way you look at the film, but I think their inclusion is worth it. They feel like an extra treat from Criterion that isn't necessary, but you do enjoy still. And if you find Max to be a really fun character, then I'm sure these will bring some joy. Then we get an episode of The Charlie Rose Show, which is a US talk show featuring interviews with Anderson and Murray. Well, the whole episode isn't really necessary, and I can't imagine people wanting to watch anything other than the Rushmore bits. It does flesh out the context of the film, and it does feel like an archival piece of the time. Seeing the attitudes of Murray and Anderson is as interesting as it is in the behind-the-scenes documentary. Plus, you see how the film was initially promoted too, which might be of interest to some. And another one of my favourite inclusions is footage of Jason Schwartzman's audition. What I love the most is the fact that the actor has such a clear grasp on the character from the get-go. You really do believe that no one else could have played Max.
You know what I can't figure out? What? How a person who once saw something in another person can just all of a sudden not see it. Max. And you know what? I can't figure out why you can't just let me float by. For old time's sake, because I can't. That's not the way we run this school.
I'm a sucker for anything that shows the making of a film that I love, so to see it this early on in production is really cool. Easily one of the highlights of the Blu-ray for me. I'm related to this in a way, being that it's from early production. It's the inclusion of Anderson's storyboards and their comparison to the finished film. While they're not visually stunning like the ones of Kurosawa, for example, they're still great for seeing how closely his vision is matched in the final version of the film. I feel like Criterion are great, especially for guiding you through how a film was made, from showing you the earliest glimpses available so you can see everything that went into the final finished version of the film. And finally, for the special features, we of course get a trailer for the film. It's a trailer, there's not much else I can say. So I love the film, and for the most part the special features do a great job of complementing it. But with this being Criterion, we have to have a closer look at the Blu-ray itself. So, this is the cover. And I absolutely love it. It was drawn by Eric, who made the documentary, and I think it captures Max's loneliness really well, especially from the later half of the film. It's also got that playfulness of youth as well, which are the pastel colours that are used. I think by having Max on his own, it sort of suggests that he's in his own world for most of the time. He really is this unique child. And then when we open this up, we have the disc there, and this. Now, this is another one of my favourite inclusions. It's a poster, and I'm kind of terrified to put it up because I want to keep it in perfect condition, but I'll get it out and show you. Here we are. It's a map of the world of Max Fisher. This is again drawn by Eric, and there's tons of small Easter eggs throughout the map and references to the film, and it looks great. It's such a brilliant inclusion. I'm a big fan of paraphernalia like this, so when we get more than just the booklet, I think it adds a lot of value to the Blu-ray. Speaking of the booklet, we of course get one like with every other Criterion release, and it's more of a fold-out pamphlet than a booklet, but it's still pretty good. Visually it looks really good, and it fits the tone of the film. The essay itself is on the short side, but I still think it's really interesting. I think Dave Kerr gives a really good overview of some of the themes and autobiographical elements in the film, which aren't present anywhere else on the Blu-ray. So I would say it is a worthy addition. So overall, as a fan of Rushmore, I think this is the perfect set. If you also love the film like I do, then this is definitely worth your time. So many of the special features complement the film, and you will no doubt learn something new about it too. If you haven't seen it and are a Wes Anderson fan, then again, I can easily recommend this. It's definitely the right version to get for you. It's basically more Wes Anderson, so how can you say no? If you're not a Wes Anderson fan, then I would say still give it a go. It's more accessible than his later films. But I would recommend waiting until there's a sale on Criterion's or finding a cheaper copy of the film, just so you're not spending as much money if you don't like it. So there we go. What do you think of Rushmore? Have you got the Criterion? What do you think? Let me know, comment below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I've had a blast talking about this film, I really do love it. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.